Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Thursday, January the 29th. And welcome to our commentary. Let me put in a little plug for a previous video that we did, the one yesterday, Wednesday, where we spoke with John French. John is a contributor to American Thinker, and he wrote a great article about the protest up in Minneapolis and, a little bit of the psychology maybe of some of these protesters. And I thought it was absolutely great. John lived in Minneapolis for about 40 years. He knows the city inside out. And I thought that his analysis of what's happening up there was just absolutely great. So check it out. It's the video right before this one on Wednesday the 28th. Check it out, and I think you're going to enjoy it a lot. I thought it was one of our better presentations. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about Director Holman, in a second, but let me direct you to my post today over at the American Thinker, where I'm talking about Canada. You know, some of you may know that the Prime Minister of Canada gave a speech sort of, boosting all of this new relationship that Canada was going to have with China. And it hasn't exactly been met with a lot of support within Canada, because I think a lot of Canadians understand that they're right next to the United States. What are they doing, developing a relationship with a country so far away? And also, there are some practical differences here. As I write in my post, geography is destiny. I mean, what country you're next to is going to define a great deal your commerce and your political situation. Canada being next to the United States, I mean, my goodness, what a tremendous benefit to Canada. Not only do they have the United States, the biggest market in the world, next to them, but they're protected by the United States. They're protected for free. I mean, they have to invest very little money in their defense. Now, some of it is, of course, because we have to. I mean, if you have a missile flying over Canada, you don't know if it's going to come to the United States. You got to shoot it down. So some of it is just common sense on our part. But the benefit to Canada is that an economy like Canada's doesn't have to invest a lot of money in its own defense. And in fact, they don't. They're not even paying 2% of the NATO commitment. So in this particular, and there are other practical things too. For example, oil. If you want to sell oil to China, well, you got to pipeline it all the way to Vancouver, or all the way to the other side of the Atlantic, Vancouver, probably closer, to get it to Vancouver so you can load up a Canadian ship, or you got to have all these trucks transporting it to Vancouver, which is, of course, an additional cost. Whereas with the United States, the pipeline goes right down to Montana. Not that long of a ride, between Alberta and Montana or North Dakota, or whatever it may be. So we have a natural relationship with Canada. And, I know the Canadians are angry with Trump. And, I understand that. Sometimes, when Trump was talking about the 51st state, I know some of them were hurt by that. But the bottom line is that Trump has actually done a good thing for Canada, in the sense that he's made them aware of just how uncompetitive that country is, overtaxed, overregulated. And they should be, in a sense, trying to get closer to the United States by eliminating whatever trade restrictions and trying to come up really with a North American economy that includes Canada and the United States, instead of having these petty fights with President Trump. They should just say, hey, what can we do? What can we do to become closer to the United States? Now, apparently, Prime Minister Carney, from what we've heard, called the White House and sort of said, hey, look, that was kind of a political speech, and don't take me too seriously, so maybe nothing's going to happen. But, geography is destiny. And if you're next to the United States, you better take advantage of it, because that's your market. Not only your market, but even the people are similar. I mean, similar stories in many cases. I mean, I don't mean to be rude when I say this, but a lot of times I don't know. When I meet a Canadian, particularly an English-speaking Canadian, I don't know if he's from Manitoba or from North Dakota, because we're so similar in our background. So anyway, Canada and the United States should be working together. Canada should not be looking for markets in China, because that's not good. That's not good for Canada. Let me talk a little bit about Director Holman, who is apparently going to become the face now of the deportation movement. It doesn't mean that the Secretary of Homeland Security is going to be fired or anything like that. I think she'll keep that job and continue to do other things that that job requires, like, you know, when you have a bad storm or whatever. There's still a lot to do in that department. But Director Holman is the perfect person to go before the TV, answer questions from the press, and explain what ICE is doing. And today he gave a speech talking about his trip to Minnesota. And I love the guy. He explains the situation better than anybody else. Basically, what he said was that he sat down with the leaders of Minnesota, and we're going to try to work better, which is smart not only for the people of Minnesota but also for ICE. There's no reason that ICE should have to go to Minnesota and run around with people looking for illegal criminals. There's just simply no reason for that to happen. The local police should be working with ICE to get that done. You know, I just heard, and I don't want to misinform you with the number, but it's a big number of people. I'm not sure if it's in thousands or whatever the number is, but it's a lot of people that have been detained by ICE here in Texas. We don't have the problem they have up in Minneapolis, because down here, the local police is working with ICE. And if there are protests, the local police will be out there making sure that the protests are orderly. You don't have that in Minneapolis. The reason that that man was able to run to the police that day, or the reason that he could get away with kicking that car and yelling at the police, like we just saw another video of this guy, there's only one reason that he can do that. And that's because the local police was not maintaining order. The lady, too, the lady who was killed, her car out, you know, intercepting or stopping ICE agents from doing their job. You can't do that. And if the local police was working correctly, that would not happen. The local police would have stopped her from doing that. And my guess is that both of them would be alive today, because they wouldn't have been allowed to engage in that kind of behavior. So I think Director Holman is the right man for the job. He's going to explain things a lot better than anybody else can. Again, I have nothing against Secretary Noem. She's a very capable lady, former governor, I think, of South Dakota or North Dakota, one of those two states. Outstanding public servant who I think can do a great job in that department. But I'd rather have Tom Holman talking to the press or explaining ICE operations, because he does it better than anybody else. He's been doing it for 40 years. As you said today, he's worked for 6 presidents. My goodness, President Obama gave him a medal of recognition for the great job that he had done when he was running this department for ICE. And the way he explains things, I think, is the key here. The way he explains what ICE is doing and the difficulties they run into and the importance of working with the local authorities, that's critical. And that's why I love the fact that he's the one now doing that job. Again, I don't know if they're going to change titles. They don't have to. You know, you just simply have the what they like to call the border czar, Director Holman, doing this job, and I'm sure everything will take care of itself. But I'm really, really happy that they made this change. Frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do it before, because again, Holman is the best when it comes to dealing with these issues. I have a post coming out tomorrow talking about the mayor of New York City, who made a remark or gave a speech or whatever statement saying that New York City is facing some serious economic problems. In fact, he used the word recession or depression or whatever, referring to how deep the city's financial problems are. And that's going to be very hard for him to somehow live with, because this is a guy who basically promised everybody everything. I mean, he was not only going to put a chicken in every pot, but he was going to give you a free bus. He was going to give you this. He was going to give you that. Well, when he got to the job, he found out what many of us thought he was going to find out, which is that New York City doesn't have the money, and the state of New York doesn't have the money either. And I don't think the governor of New York is going to bail him out. I know President Trump is not going to bail him out. So this is going to be a very difficult task for the mayor of of New York City, because he's going to have to basically tell a bunch of people, hey guys, all those promises I made, I can't keep them. Now, he's already talking about we got to raise taxes on the rich and we got to raise taxes on very profitable corporations. Well, that's not going to get him anywhere. First of all, there are less and less rich people living there because they're moving out. And they're moving out because of the crazy taxes. And the corporations, too, many of them have moved out. I'm sure you've heard about, Wall Street moving to Texas, not completely, but here in the Dallas, Texas area, we're seeing a number of financial operations that used to be in Wall Street moving down here. So I think this is going to be a very tough thing for Mamdani, because he's going to have to basically take back a lot of stuff that he said. And he may find out maybe by mid-year or maybe later in the year that being mayor of New York City was not as much fun, honestly, as he thought it was going, as he thought it was going to be. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in New York. But this guy made a lot of promises that he's not going to be able to keep, and it's starting to happen. Well, on this day in history, 1936, I guess, so that would make it, 90 years ago, the Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame, was inaugurated in Cooperstown. And people like Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb, Walter Johnson, were part of the first class of people that went into the Hall of Fame. And the Hall of Fame, of course, has grown over the years. And that's where I've never been to Cooperstown. It's one of my dreams to go to Cooperstown and see the Baseball Hall of Fame. I got to do it, as much as I love baseball. But Cooperstown is just an amazing place to visit because you've got this beautiful building for the Hall of Fame of baseball. And when you walk in, from the movies I've seen and people who've been there, you just, it's like being in baseball heaven. You've got all these pictures and all these stories of the best of the best. So the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown was started on this day in 1936. Babe Ruth, trying to remember who went in. Babe Ruth, Walter Johnson, Ty Cobb. Oh, I forgot the others, but Babe Ruth went in and Ty Cobb went in. That's pretty good group. Walter Johnson, pretty good pitcher. Lefty Mathewson, I think, went in too. I don't remember. I had the names, and all of a sudden I can't think of them. But there were 5 or 6 who went in the first class of 1936. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later.